Hey, welcome to another episode of The Word with Friends. I am John.
I'm Beth.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Brian.
Hey, we are so excited about our topic tonight. Laura, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, we're going to talk about fear.
Yes.
Ooh.
And
why not?
Specifically, hopefully, overcoming fear and how, the Christian lifestyle, the Christian worldview, and in particular, the Word of God and our relationship with God can really help us with that. So I had pulled up on my phone 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
We are living in a time where we're seeing mental illness, anxiety, stress, depression at like rates just I don't think before seen, and we're certainly it's not getting any better.
No,
and we just came out of a huge fear-based situation,
worldwide situation
that we're now,
Yeah.
Now as the smoke is clearing and information is being shared, there's a lot of people that were put in horrible situations based on fear, and then others that were looked down at based on fear. There was a bunch of stuff going on in division of society, world, the whole thing based on fear. So
Fear,
that's a great topic. Yeah, for sure.
So it's a powerful tool of the adversary to get to people's lives, to get them to, be too afraid to take risks, because, we do need to take risks in life. Starting a business is a risk. Yeah, committing to someone in marriage is a risk. Yet having children is a risk. So it gets people afraid to take risks. It gets people afraid to do all sorts of things.
Imagine there are folks that are just the simplistic things in life, which is just to walk out that front door, and the fear that comes along with that. To some folks, it can be very stifling to life in general.
Yeah.
And it goes into it couples with the idea that how do we grow as people?
Yeah.
Everybody loves the comfort zone. It's why it's called the comfort zone, because I'm safe here. I'm comfortable. I don't want, but do we grow in that comfort zone? Do we? Not really. You don't ever really, you get stagnant. And what's keeping us out of that comfort zone, or what's keeping us in that comfort zone is that safety, but it's also a fear of the unknown. What's going to happen if I know this, I'm safe over here. What happens if I step outside of there? I don't know. I could get swept away. I could get whatever, you name it. So fear stifles growth, both mentally, spiritually, sometimes depending on what angle we're coming at. So so it's a big one. It literally keeps some people in their houses.
Yeah, it does.
Sure. And I think it's something that we've all struggled with, and God knows our heart, but we know God's will, and God's will is that we live a life of abundance, and that abundance is freedom, and freedom from fear. That's one of the promises in his word that we can claim. Perfect love casts out fear, his word says. So, that perfect love that we have for God and from God is what's going to dispel that in our lives. And I know there were a couple situations where we're going to have a fear of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's not necessarily a fear, but there's always like I wonder how this is going to go down. And that's a perfectly normal response to a situation like that. But to handle it calmly and, try to educate ourselves and then move, like the key is just moving. So what were some of the fear situations you guys have worked through?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
I mean, for me, I've always been a little apprehensive about being in group settings a lot, especially, sports and stuff. I did sports as a kid, but I did baseball, things like that. But after a while, it's just something that I was afraid of failing. I was afraid to get made fun of, sometimes it's rough growing up, and when we were growing up, being made fun of and the whole bully thing was a real thing. There wasn't such a task force out there to eliminate the, you had to deal with your bullies and you had to deal with that. And some of that was, walking away from it, and it stifled some of that social interactions, and I found myself shying away from that a lot. Like, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to look like a fool. I don't want to look stupid or whatever. So one of my coping mechanisms was to just avoid the situation altogether. And that I developed that habit so much so that now here I am in my 40s trying to reverse that and get myself out there, because we teach, in our fellowship, and that's okay. 5, 6 people that 10 people that I know, but now we start, if we're going to teach or talk to 30, 40, 50, 100, whatever people, it's overwhelming.
Well, we sure hope it turns into the thousands that will be listening. Right?
at least 6 more people, but and I've had to push past that myself, and a lot of the modern ways of handling these kind of things, if you want to call it anxiety or whatever, is medication. And it's, I don't begrudge anybody doing what they need to do to get to where they need to be to have peace. If that's if professional, like legitimate professional help or legitimate medication is needed to get you to the point where you can get to where the word is ultimately the thing that's going to heal you. For me, I choose not to be medicated, for better or for worse. Maybe someone's like, yeah, you actually need it, but I'm like,
So what are you doing? So you've started something recently.
So I was searching, and I'm like, and for whatever reason, I think God put it there. I started looking up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'd heard other podcasters talk about it, especially guys who've been in the military, things like that. And it's a way, it's a camaraderie thing. Obviously, it's not a single person sport. You have to, and it's competitive where you're in combat. That's something I've never done. I've never had to fight or defend myself, thankfully. Never been in any combat. I'm not a military veteran or anything like that. So you want to talk about comfort zones? Like, my comfort zone was in the parking lot across the street. And for whatever reason, something drove me in there, and I'm thankful that I found the class, the instructor, and in all the patrons that are there, all the students that are there. It is truly the group that I needed. Like, God put these men and women, because it's mixed, sexes. There's a few women who roll in the classes that I'm in, and there's one fellow. I'm like, I told Laura, I'm like, this is the guy I need in my life right now to get me through some of these things, because he is actually a military vet. He's suffered, other combat situations. So, he's worked through some of the similar things as far as like the mental things that I struggle with. So we talk through it, as easily, triangling my head with his, legs or arms or something, like, you got this. And I'm like, choking out. Yeah. But no, it's something that has pushed me beyond where I thought I would ever be. And that was in February. And here we are right now. It's May 2024. And it's been great. And I found myself wanting to go more and more and more, stepping up the days that I go, and excited. Currently nursing an injury, so I took it easy this week, but that has really helped me in many ways with my communication with other people, at work, and doing this.
Do you think it's like helped your confidence?
Yeah, I think honestly what it's helped me do is not overthink things. I know that's a shocker for you, because I'm a chronic overthinker too, which is another thing. So I just get out there and start to do it, where, it's one of those things where, like, I've lived through harder things physically. I can get through this mentally, and that's definitely helping me with like that kind of stuff. So that's my experience in a modern day. I've had other times where fear has driven a lot of decisions or driven me away from things. And I've had to make huge life changes. Yeah. And make huge life changes, especially work-based stuff. I walked away from a pretty good paying job into the unknown, much to the chagrin of family and friends who were like, what are you doing? You guys are going to be homeless. You're going to, you got kids, you're not going to be able to feed them. And I was so overwhelmed with fear in my job and stress and all these things. And I'm like, I'm done. And I'm like, you know what? God's going to take care of me. And did we struggle for a little bit here and there? Yeah, we did. We had a couple of times where, you know, I had to choose to pay the phone bill or the electric bill and stuff like that. But did that make us stronger individuals?
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
And it made a stronger couple as well.
And walking away from that, I felt more at peace in that situation, working 2 jobs to make ends meet financially, than I did having someone who was like just beating me down at work, and the stress of like, I was afraid to go to work at times. That was like that much stress and that much fear. And I'm like, I'm not doing that again. And I walked away from it, and I've been better ever since. And it's just been one great victory that I hold on to. It's like, and God took care of us throughout that. We never, 100%. God says that we'll never see his children begging bread.
Right.
And we never did that. We never were that to that level of where we were like, we're not going to eat.
Yeah.
You know,
that goes back to what Laura was talking about with the risks. I mean, that was a risk that you took for your family, but is it really truly a risk when we know that we have God on our side?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think a risk is something that is totally uncalculated, but God is calculated. He tells us time and time again that he's going to be with us. And I think we all have those victory stories in our lives.
I think what's really interesting about that whole situation is, and maybe you hadn't thought about it this way, which is the putting your foot down as far as being treated the way you were being treated. In the word, it says that we are his children and that we, you know, the promise that's been given to us, we don't have to tolerate, and this may sound heady, but I'm looking at the extreme of exactly who we are, our identity with Christ and with God, right? Which is we are his kids. He doesn't want a life where we have to be fearful to go to work because the way we're being treated. In fact, you know, you stuck it out for as long as you could. You didn't give up, and because you were taking care of your family, you were doing all the things that you thought were right. You didn't change your perspective, and you could have easily conformed and fallen into, you know, allowing either the person to beat you up or even change who you are to the core, which is not that person.
Right.
You stuck to what you are, which is a child of God, and that's not how we handle stuff. We endure, but at point you put your foot down and said, no longer. I'm not going to do this anymore because it's not benefiting my family. It certainly isn't benefiting me. And how long were you unemployed?
Well, he was never unemployed.
I was never actually unemployed.
That's what I'm saying. So even though things got a little tight,
yes,
the transition,
at
no point were you in a situation to where God left you and where the next move wasn't going to be better. And I'm assuming based on
where you're at now,
you didn't say horribly, but that was a bad mistake. You said, you know, you found peace, and now are endeavoring to open up these possibilities of other things to enjoy in life, which that other job was obviously stymieing you for even thinking you had the availability to do that.
Exactly.
So the peace of God that's big. Yeah. So I just, it really opens my eyes to there's where you didn't, being fearless in that moment and really putting your trust in God. I mean, boy, he sure came through with the promises, right?
Yeah. And it's knowing that going with God is like, it's also one of those situations where he will give you guidance on how to handle that situation. Because I could have been like, I'm out of here. I'm throwing away a 20-something year career, 20-year career. But I didn't. I remember distinctly, I said, you know what, maybe this isn't the position for me anymore. Because that left me available to stay employed.
Right.
Essentially, he was in a management position and he stepped down to like an hourly position.
Yeah.
And did you go? No, you were full-time.
I never went part-time because I kept all my benefits too.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that it was in a field that you weren't necessarily accustomed to doing. You had, you know what I mean? So you were jumping off into this unknown for that too. And based on the fact that you're still employed, I would assume you're being successful at what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome.
Brian,
the whole jujitsu thing's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it was very cool. Brian referenced Psalm 37:25. He said that God doesn't see his children begging bread. The verses, I have been young and now I'm old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread.
Yeah.
And that was a comforting verse for us during that time. Like, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
We're going to make it through this. And we did.
Yeah.
And we were doing pretty good.
Sometimes it's minute by minute. Sometimes, it's day by day, hour by hour. Sometimes it's minute by minute.
And for you guys too, I think at the same time, didn't you start a whole new position as well during,
was that during the same time? I mean,
it's kind of still, or even coming out of one and into, that's a lot of, you guys have gone
there
through.
There were some changes.
There was a lot of changes going on.
Yeah. And to be honest, as people watching you and being around you, I never saw moments of like you were going, this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
I know
it was never
like
that,
we never once thought it was the wrong decision.
And for reference too, we had small babies. We had
the kids were younger
4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, I think, at the time. Jacob was a baby, but that was part of it. One of my big driving factors was like, I am not going to be another manager who doesn't see my kids grow up. What was valuable.
Workaholic.
Yeah.
And,
so, but
I know how that is.
Yeah.
What about you
what
guys?
About y'all? Yeah.
Give us one of y'all's stories.
Yeah. I got divorced.
Every single
I got divorced, and it my husband at the time was a believer and decided to not stand for God anymore. And I had to make a decision, and we had 3 kids, and we had just moved to Florida from Arizona. So we were in a new place. I knew no one. And the decision that I made to do this was definitely, a couple of years in the thinking. And it was pretty scary because I didn't know how I would make out financially, where I was going to live. Was there going to be this huge battle between me and him with the kids and finances and stuff? Yeah. And it was really a scary situation. And, I believed God to get through it all. And I'm not going to say that there weren't issues, because there were. In fact, to this day, I feel like there were issues. This was 20 years ago. Yeah. But I just believed God to handle situations as they came. And here I was, a single mom with 3 kids. I owned a house at that time. I owned my car at that time. God made sure we had what we needed. Right. Were there times I had to do food stamps? Absolutely. Were there times I had to do healthcare from the state? Absolutely. I used the resources that God gave me. Those were resources that were available to somebody in my position. I didn't abuse them, but I used them. And when I didn't need to use them anymore, I stopped so I could make that available for somebody else. But it was a really scary time. And had it not been for God, I don't think I would have gotten through that. There was a time that I also didn't make God a priority. In our first episode, we talked about keeping God first. And there was a long period of time throughout some of that I didn't do that. And I found myself in positions that I could have easily avoided had I just kept God first. So then there was believing to get out of those. I just felt like, God was probably just like right behind me the whole time, ready to get me, because, I took him on a run for sure. But, I found my way back, and thank God, because life has just been so amazing. I was in a position to be able to meet my husband, who wasn't a believer necessarily. I mean, I think in his core, he probably was, but he wasn't practicing. But I met him, and I fell in love with him, and he was meek to other things that I was sharing with him. And we would talk about the word, and he had some fear that he let go of, and he had some strong feelings towards God that he let go of as a result of me being able to share with him. So I think, ultimately it came around full circle, and God was able to really make lemonade out of a lemon, a lemon for me. So I'm super thankful. But yeah, there are lots of scary times with the kids when they were little, growing up and trying to figure things out. But God was always right there. He never left. I walked away. He was here the whole time. I walked away from the protection. I walked away from the fruitfulness.
Yeah.
What about you, babe?
Well, mine's such a vastly different thing. I mean, I growing up and stuff. I did a lot of fearless type stuff, football, sports, wanted to hang glide, rode bulls. I've
Nice.
done
That's so cool.
skiing, snowboarding, rock climbing, motorsports, all kinds of different things that were kind of fearless stuff.
Risky.
A lot of wrestling and hand-to-hand stuff, physical type things. So almost the opposite kind of how you were coming up, Brian, is where there wasn't that in me, but there was this fear, which was the fear of needing to have to be with somebody, the fear of being alone, the fear of not being good enough to keep someone in my life. And then, of course, as my parents got older and my dad and mom got sick and things, well, it's not so much my mom now, thank you, God. But, as my dad got sick and stuff, it was the fear of losing him, all the time spent, to, being super angry at God about those things. And what the word has really brought me is peace. I spend less time. I'm not saying there are still times of insecurity in those things. I can go stand in front of 1,000 people. I'll have butterflies and I could talk and be stupid. And I don't have a problem with that. But get me one-on-one with a complete stranger. It's a little different. It's a little fearful because I'm like, I don't really know them. I don't want to offend, any of those kinds of things. I want to be stupid. But my biggest fear was, once I had really committed to this relationship, was losing it.
Yeah.
And the beauty of sharing the word in our lives together is a lot of the things that I used to question before I'm not questioning, because I have faith that her guiding principles are the word, my guiding principles are the word, and the common ground and the way we see and respect each other is based on what God says how this relationship should be, including my own personal respect for her too. But
yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but still the same thing. It's still the inner heart and brain and the feelings and emotions of fear. And it's so much nicer not having those things and not being afraid in those ways anymore.
It's so liberating too. I mean, as parents, we think about, I remember I was recently watching this thing about parenting, and like we I don't know if we talked about it last time or not. Recently, about being feral children. When in the 80s, you would get
Gen Xers.
Yeah, you just run around. You could be out. You had to be home before the lights came on. The street lights came on and stuff like that. And this fear of kids getting snatched up became a thing as we were growing up. So then we grew up like that, and in our generation of parents were become like the helicopter parents, like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. You had to be like hovering all the time. And we've tried our best to break ourselves from that habit and let our kids go out, ride your bike, go out, and just let us know you're leaving the house. Say, hey, I'm heading out, blah, blah. And Jacob will ride his bike for, 30, 40 minutes, hour to go hang at his friend's house. I'm like, just be back, and if you're going to be longer than that, call us, bring your phone, something like that. It's kind of a mix between how we were, I think, but that fear of like our kids getting, would keep them inside and then build in them that whole, it's like a cyclical thing. So I'm like, we're trying to give them as much space, and also let them know that if they do fall, we'll be there to dust them off and push them back out on the street and stuff, like to get back out there and get back up and stuff. So.
If I may interject, so Jacob is 13 years old. So yeah, he can go ride his bike to the kids down the street. And actually he's been riding his bike solo for quite some time now. For several years we've been letting him. But that was a real, I don't know if it was as strong of an emotional thing for you as it was for me. I know for me it was like, it was hard to, let him. I mean, I had other parents were like, you let your kids out in the yard, like this when they were younger, not toddlers, but young enough to like, okay, this is the boundaries. Like you can go in the yard, you can play anywhere in the yard, but you can't go past the sidewalk.
Well, for the viewers, you don't have a fenced yard.
No,
I
we
don't have a fenced
No.
yard.
So
I
yeah,
do
not
not.
as easy.
Don't go past the sidewalk. And but so for me, they didn't have as much freedom as I did as a kid, because my parents didn't know where I was.
None of our parents knew.
No, they didn't. Oh my God. I don't know that they cared out there, but for me, you know, it was hard. I'm like, oh my God, what if something happens, whatever. But it's like, okay, God, you're with her and him. You're with my kids, even when I'm not.
Yeah.
You're going to keep them safe.
Right.
And logically, like, we live in a safe neighborhood. There's, you know, we're good.
Yeah.
But,
Well, you know, okay.
but I had other parents go, hey, you let them in the yard, like, and you're not there. Well, I'm in the house. And they thought I was crazy,
Right.
because they wouldn't allow their kids to go even in their own front yard, or, you know, without them having to monitor them, because, you know, God forbid they get snatched up or something. And it's like, man, I do get that emotional response, because I have it.
Sure.
But I had to trust
through.
God, push through and trust God, because my kids, I'm raising adults, you know,
Future adults.
I'm raising them to be adults.
Yeah.
And I cannot do that if I don't give them any independence. And if I'm monitoring them all the time, and I'm like overseeing every little nitty thing they do, and preventing every scratch and bruise, then they're never going to learn resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to live fearful lives. So like you said, a cyclical thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was tough. Sorry.
as a parent with adult children who are all out of the house, except for one that came back. The day I sat through my son swearing into the Navy.
Oh my God.
That was
you
huge.
Cry?
I did.
Yeah.
Because not only was he going, but he has not come back. He has never lived home again. And that was the end of it.
And it's great.
Yeah. but you know what?
He's on a level of like, he's being an adult.
He's
That's
doing
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's Mom, it's what they're supposed to do.
I know.
It is. We
but
know.
it's hard as a parent.
And here's the thing. We might have thought back when we look at our parents, just to tie in what Laura was talking about, you know, when we look back at our parents, the way we were parented, I mean, our parents were a little bit older than yours, maybe, or a very similar generation, I would say.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But I will say this, as much as we think that they didn't care, or that maybe they didn't pay attention, I think they had a bigger belief than we did. You know what I'm saying? Like God was, if we go, I mean, the presence of God through society is slowly, unfortunately,
diminishing.
And you know, but in those times, you know, as much as maybe they didn't talk about it as maybe some other parents did. I honestly think both my parents believe, and I think they just thought, you know what, they're going to be okay.
Yeah,
it's good for them to get out and experience, to get in a little bit of trouble and to put themselves in situations that aren't
and my
necessarily
parents,
good.
Back then, people talked to each other, and they knew every one of their neighbors, and those neighbors would beat my butt if they saw something outside.
Yeah,
you had some abusive people, and no wonder you were so messed up. No, I'm just kidding.
But I mean,
you had everybody watching the neighborhood together.
Exactly, it was a community.
Yeah,
and I don't feel like we have that now. I know we don't. Here, we talk to a couple neighbors. We say hi. If the dog gets loose, they may recognize that it's ours and return it. But other than that, we have no.
I'm so happy that my mom and dad raised me. You know, there are many flaws, but they're mine. But the one thing that they did they allowed me to go out and experience things, and they trusted me. And here's the thing back. And I know my sister, maybe not so much, my brother, maybe not so much, but it landed with me, which was in the trade, which is they respected me or gave enough confidence that I wasn't going to do stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I respected them. That went, like you said, Brian, if I was at a friend's house and I was going somewhere else, hey, Mom, I'm just wanting you know I'm going to Dave's house now. And it was just a quick call. And my mom was like, where are you going? Or no, you can't go. It was always like, okay, Well, let me know
Yeah.
when let me know when you're leaving there, or or it'd be like getting dark. Hey, mom, is it cool if I stay for another 10 minutes and I'll be right home? 10 more minutes. And it wasn't like, let me push the boundaries. It was like, well, she gave me 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
I'm coming in 5. So that next time I get 30, and that's how it worked. Even all through high school, my parents let me do some stuff that most parents wouldn't let their high school kids do. But I respected my parents enough to where I didn't push boundaries. They had rules.
It goes both ways.
They had rules, but I got to experience so much stuff in my life as a young person that I think helped me become who I am. But at the same time, maybe there's some other stuff that I could have been a little tighter on, I guess. That time in prison,
Yeah. But like you said, fear can be super limiting. And if we allow that to drive our decision making, it's not going to be a very fruitful life.
Yeah. Well, and then you have when you have fear as like a social contagion, if you will, where so I talked about, my experience with letting my kids play outside, but I'm not the only one. And it's out there, and it's really bad, and people are not letting their kids experience life because they're too busy being afraid for their kids. And I gotta protect.
Who does
so
that
now
remind
you
you
have
of?
this social contagion of fear, and then that negatively affects the next generation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because it perpetuates it, and on we go. I mean, again,
and I mean, you could talk about that in the, you mentioned the pandemic and how that was, a big fear event for people. So that was a social contagion, not just of a virus, but of fear. That fear was, I think,
that spread into things that weren't just about being ill. Into food, into surfaces, into spaces, air. And then it transformed into, hey, well, the way you talk to me and the way you say things to me, I don't like, and I'm afraid to offend anybody by saying how I feel about stuff or having an opinion, or we've become so cautious. We've become so cautious about what we say and what we do, which listen, I'm not saying that we should just full on be disrespectful and say what you want, but but we certainly, fear has gotten into that too, where now we're so afraid to offend. We've there was stuff happening that wasn't good, and we've so overcorrected that now everybody's just afraid to just even talk to each other.
Well, it stifles conversation, and you can't have. Okay, we'll bring it back around to the word. How do you share the word if you can't have a conversation with somebody?
Right.
Yeah.
How do you do anything without having a conversation if you have to check and make sure you don't offend everybody after every third
yourself.
Yeah, after every third syllable. I mean, we have spoken communication is the most fundamental form of communication that we have. Outside we have the written word, both secular and non-secular, but not everybody reads this. Not everybody can read, but just about everybody can talk, and eventually you could form communication even if you have language barriers, after time. But it's like, if you stifle that, because of fear of offending somebody, you've broken down a building block of society.
For sure.
The thing that I was thinking about was Job, and I pulled up the verse just so I could read it and get it right. Job 3:25, for the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. And the fear that he had, when you read chapter 1 and 2, was fear that his kids weren't doing what they were supposed to do before the Lord. So huge example of he had adult kids, but his kids were responsible for their own walk with God. It wasn't his responsibility anymore. They had their own households, their own families. And he was so consumed with, are they doing the right thing? And so think about that in the midst of what we're doing, because I do that. I think about it. I don't fear it, but I think about it. Is my daughter making good decisions?
Sure.
What's my son doing, over in California? I think of those things, but I'm not fearful. And there's a difference that he let this consume him to the point where it opened a door for the enemy to destroy everything he had.
Well, let's be honest. I think, because we're not perfect people, I wouldn't say that you're not fearful. There are times it still happens, but then you go to the word.
It's concern. I don't think it's fear.
I love you, but I think if you're honest with yourself, there's fear times, and that's okay. That's the point of this conversation, right? Is that we're saying, listen, as Christians who know the word, who are trying to endeavor to live it to the best of our abilities, we still fall short. As long as we're keeping our mindset in like, okay, what am I doing? What am I fearing for?
Right.
God's got this. He's promised me. Why am I being so afraid of the promise? I should be afraid. I should be fearful. I guess that's the wrong way to look at it too. Be fearful of what God thinks of me for not even believing him.
No,
he's made it
fearful about that.
He's made it pretty darn clear.
You know how he feels.
I know how he feels.
Yeah.
He'll go, John, come on, buddy. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Brian?
Oh yeah. I was just, I was looking up a verse also. It's Joshua 1:9. And
such a good verse.
And this is one of those, like, it's like you just want almost like tattooed on your palm, so you can just look at it in the back of your hand. Somewhere you can see it. It says, have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. So no matter where you are, the creator of the heavens and the earth is with you. If you remember that, again, and he says it clearly, don't be afraid. What do you have to fear? It's like you have God on your side. There should be nothing that we fear. And I know that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
Perfect example right here, living in the flesh.
Yeah.
It's remembering that and taking that moment, because what does fear do? Fear works you up and you get anxious, and then you either your mind starts racing and stuff like that. And you might jump to a conclusion
or freeze up.
But it's like taking that moment. And again, I mentioned it in a previous podcast where the word says, be still and know that I am God. Take a moment. And again, breathing is a really great way to reset that. So like I know it sounds kind of weird, but if I get in a moment where I'm anxious or something, just, deep breaths, and then just reassess the situation.
That's
many times
one
that
of the things you learned from jujitsu too, right?
Yes, because in a high anxiety moment, a lot of times I would stop breathing, like hold my breath, because you're focusing or you're freaking out or something like that. And the last thing I need to be doing while someone's putting pressure on my body, to submit me, is to hold my breath, because I'm just making it easier for them. I'm just going to pass out. I'm literally going to pass out. And my coach is like, breathe, Brian, don't forget to breathe. So, and it's one of those things where it helps me because part of the things I'm trying to overcome is like that fear of like being crushed. I know that sounds like a weird one, but like claustrophobia. Yeah. Someone presses their body weight on me. I got a 230-pound guy who's putting all of his weight on my chest. I'll start to panic, like, oh my God, I need to escape. But I'm learning how to. That's
probably a response for anybody.
I would imagine.
I want you guys to like understand the gravity of like the fear that he had in this too, where sometimes in the early morning when he's still in bed, kind of like half asleep, and I'd come up to hug him and I'd like kind of rest my body on him. He'd be like, no, I need you to get off me.
Oh,
because
wow.
that feeling of weight, like, caused him to panic.
Yeah, it's not like a heavy. It's not always. It's just any kind of like constriction of pressure. Feel like I'm trapped. It's one of those kind of situations. But and to get back to it, like having that, and the guy who I've been working with, I'm like, he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, just I'll let you know when I'm ready. When I need you to stop." But and he'll have that pressure on me, and I'm just like, "It's okay." And like check in with your fingers, your toes. Like, what can you move? What can you do? And it's helping. I'm not there 100%. It's still an opportunity for me, but it's one of those things where like, just breathe, check in with the whole situation. Is this as bad as it really seems? If I step outside my door, is everything that I'm imagining that could possibly go wrong probable to happen? What is the probability of these things? And then if you can rationalize that and to be like, you know what, I'm probably going to be okay. The plane's probably not going to fall out of the sky and hit me. Some random, Final Destination style thing is probably not going to happen.
And that's renewed mind. That's replacing negative with positive.
Yeah.
Replacing worldly thoughts with godly thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're doing.
Yeah. And even again, it is when we have the word to put on there, but even from a secular perspective, you rationalize what is life experiences. I've walked out this door many times before this. Is it to say that this won't happen? No, the chances are highly unlikely, but I'm not going to let it stop me.
Right.
I'm going to face this, and I'm going to get to my car. I'm going to get to my bicycle or whatever I'm going towards, or my mode of transportation, to the bus or whatever, and I'm going to keep moving. Deep breaths, and then that a lot of times that one little victory helps cement the next one. And like, okay, I made it through that. That's like my first session of jiu-jitsu. I got in there. I'm like, I don't know how I walked in this door, but I don't know how.
Let's do this.
Here. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then the next one, it just keeps building and keeps building and keeps building. So now I have a desire to go.
Don't they say that the hardest part is making the decision?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We learn about, that whole process. You decide, which is very difficult, but you don't always have the desire until you've made that decision.
Yeah.
Right.
People sit around waiting for the desire to do something when you really should just make the decision and go do it. And then actually, as you're doing it,
that desire builds.
You get excited about it.
Yeah.
So. Well, let's not forget that, fear is not of God, right?
Yeah.
Oh no,
absolutely.
He is not the author of fear.
Nope.
Yeah.
And again, we read this all the time in our fellowship, and we always go, and everyone's heard this verse before, but I think it's timely to talk about it, which is, what is the purpose of fear? Brian, you even said it. What's the purpose of fear? What's the whole purpose of it? Well, the purpose of it is this: there's an adversary, and we have an enemy, and the enemy is hoping that fear will stifle us and keep us from living life with abundance and light, right? Continuing the word of God. John 10:10, the thief cometh not but to steal, to kill, and destroy. And I am come that they may have life, and then they may have it more abundantly.
Yeah.
The adversary is hoping to kill dreams, to kill your confidence, to kill adventure, to kill this, the fact that you're going against that fear that you had of having someone on you and what it could do and the whole thing is a way to make you afraid to have any contact with it. Look at, you were talking about even your own wife. You're like, hey, hold
Get
on.
off.
Give it a hug.
Let's be honest.
It's really her love. It's her overwhelming love.
Sure, but it's not but your intention wasn't for it to steal something from your relationship. But let's be honest, it can.
It could. What if you keep pushing her away?
Kill intimacy.
And then she doesn't want to come around.
Kill the amazing feeling of being close to the one that you love. It destroys relationships.
Yeah.
It's fear is such that thing it's straight from the adversary. It's not
of God. Sure is.
Yeah.
So
when I was a little girl, so I can recall maybe I was 3 years old. I was very young. One of the first thing that I can remember ever being afraid of was a thunderstorm. We lived up in Michigan at the time. And I remember absolutely just cowering into this chair as a little girl, like crying. It was terrifying to me. And I do remember it was a bad storm. So I'll say that for myself. But for my 3-year-old self, it was okay. But my dad picked me up and he's like, there's nothing to be afraid of. And I'm like, no, cry, fighting him. And he's like, come, you're going to come with me. And he's holding me and he takes me outside.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. He takes me outside and we're standing on we had, it's just a small patio, out the front door. And he's like, look at the clouds. Oh, look at that lightning flash. Like, I've got you. You're safe. You're okay. And, you know, I've never been afraid of thunderstorms since. My dad, I actually really I like thunderstorms now. And my dad, you know, that's one of the best memories. Dad's still with us, guys. But
Yes.
one of the best memories of my childhood with my dad is this moment of him like holding me and just, you're okay. It's not going to get you. And now I find and really since then, but now I find beauty in thunderstorms, you know,
you're in the right place for it.
And I think that, you know, that situation can be analogous to how God takes care of us too.
Yes.
You know? There's still a thunderstorm out there, but
it's not scary.
It's not that scary. And God's got us.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to bet in those moments when there's the storm, your first thought is to think about, like you said, when you were a little girl.
I really do.
Right?
I really do.
The lesson learned of your father wrapping you up in his arms and going, hey, come on, I'm with you. You're going to be okay. I'm not going to let it, but let's go out there and let's experience it. But you're not by yourself.
Yeah.
And I know your dad, and I love your dad. And I can totally see him doing this. And now when there's thunderstorms, I'm going to think
technical difficulties.
And it brings peace to me.
We're still recording.
What's that?
Well, if we are still recording,
we are.
Yeah.
I did not have that fear of thunderstorms. I was like Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump, and I was, you know,
were you really?
Yeah, like, you call this a storm?
Okay.
I love
you were from Florida.
I love thunderstorms.
You know, we got
Florida man here.
I mean, if you look at them, there's so much beauty in them. The light, the clouds. So can they hear us?
Text me.
Can you guys hear us?
Hello.
I don't think they can hear us now. We lost them. What is it?
All right. We might have to edit this. Where are we at in the recording? 47 minutes.
I bet you maybe we lost internet or something because like
we're fine.
Well, while they are searching for the link to get back to us, fear is not. Don't be afraid. You know, thinking about what Laura was talking about is that, you know, here's where her father took her out into the storm, and you know, think of those times when you're maybe thinking this might be a little fear, something to be afraid of, and you know, but it may be the step that you need to take to get into something that you're not so much comfortable with, or that seems, you know, odd to you because it's not normal. But you know, you've got God with you, and He can definitely guide your path and get you where you need to be. And
for sure.
And they're back. So
we were about that.
That's okay. Like, where'd they go?
It's all good. So we were just you know, talking about, again, their dad's great example of what a great lesson. I mean, he was teaching you biblical principle right in that little moment.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
And God does that too, because through the thunderstorms in life, we get answers. And there's a lot of fear, like I was saying before, of the unknown. Well, with God, He is so transparent about how life is supposed to be, how we're supposed to be doing this, how we're to live, how to carry out His will. And then we're also educated about the enemy and his devices and how he can affect us, so that we are aware.
Yeah.
And we are not ignorant of.
Isn't that nice? Because you were quoting Job, and Job says, "Oh, that my enemy had written a book."
Right?
You know, so we have God's will
now.
we have God's will for us.
Which psalm is it that it talks about the under his wings?
It's in the covert of his wings.
Yeah, it's in there quite a bit, probably.
Got it.
Yeah,
I'm over here looking,
and that's protection.
Because that's truly what it is. The storm may be above us and around us, but you know, we are perfectly protected. You know, but again, you're not going to know the protection of God unless you know what's available. And if you're diving into the word on a daily basis and you're putting it on in your heart and your mind and you're letting it root itself in you, I mean, there's where when the storms come, your first reaction is going to God and going, I have nothing to fear. The word continually tells us, fear not, fear not.
It says in Psalm 61:4, I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings.
My goodness. So good.
Psalm 46 says, God is our refuge and strength, a very
Mhm.
present help in trouble.
A very present help.
So verse 2, therefore we will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. And then in verse 5, God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God shall help her in that right early. He's talking about a holy place, referencing verse 4.
Yeah.
So therefore we will not fear, because God is our refuge and strength.
Right.
And I'm sorry I took it over.
No, it's fine.
That was so good.
It ties into the storms.
Yeah.
You know, the storm
Yeah.
your earthly father was showing you to not be afraid of. I mean,
the visual you gave us, and then it all turned into, we went into Psalms, which again, to the listeners out there who are searching and hungering for answers, they're right there in the pages of the word. If you read them and open the book and get with folks that can help you understand, there's plenty of
scripture.
There's good ministries out there that are that teach the word to the essence of what it means. Places that you can find answers to. There's Blue Letter Bible. We love using those things to
I did put that link on our YouTube channel for people to click on.
Some concordances that are great helps. And again, if you can get to a fellowship near you, do that. It's a great place to be. You can find answers to all these questions. And again, just to wrap up, the topic of which is, God does not want us to be fearful people. We are his kids. He reminds us so many places in the word that that's who we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is can I find one verse real quick?
Yeah,
I know we're wrapping things up.
While you look for that, I'll just mention, and this is just known, the either do not fear or fear not, those phrases, that is repeated more than any other phrase in the word of God. So God really doesn't want us to be afraid.
No. And that's why he went to such lengths to fully inform us by giving us this word, by putting his word in the stars, by sending his son, Jesus Christ, to be the word in the flesh.
So many people will tell you that this book is just a book of stories and different things like that. But this is truly the roadmap. This is truly the information of God's intention for his people, which is you out there listening. He wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to take care of you. He wants to remove the roadblocks that are in your life. He wants to widen the path. He wants to put you on the straight and narrow. He wants to change your life. But you have to do one simple thing, and that's just believe that it is possible.
And you might ask, how do you know that this is the truth? How do you know this is not a collection of stories? I can say, I've applied it and it's worked.
And
you can say,
witnessed it in my life.
And the two of you, same.
When you start putting on the principles of God and doing the word, you then see the results of the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're living it.
What do you got for us, Brian?
Yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily want to read this entire section here, but it's in Matthew 6. This is Jesus Christ speaking. And I think the words of our Lord and Savior carry much gravity.
I would say so.
But this section starts in verse 25 that I want to talk about. Therefore, I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, for what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air. And he goes into all these nature references, the birds of the earth, the plants, the flowers, all these things. Doesn't God take care of these things? And they don't worry about these little things. Yeah. They don't worry about that. And I love this verse because it's true. It says, just lost it. Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit unto his stature? I've been trying, and it's just
Yeah.
doesn't work. So why am I worried about it? So,
Still short. I'm not Shaquille O'Neal or anything like that.
No. But it says, it continues, why take thought of your raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, and how they grow, and they toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of them. Right? No worry, no doubt. Wherefore, if God so clothed the grass of the field, which to the day is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not so much more clothe you, O ye of little faith?
Yeah.
God is going to take care of us. And it says, don't worry about what you're going to drink, what you're going to eat, how you're going to get clothed, because God will take care of you. It's a walk. And knowing that, and that's where we were when I stepped away from that position, that management position. I'm like, God's going to take care of me. It's like walking. It's like walking across a precipice, and each step of the way, a piece of ground came up. We took a step, and it was there. It says
like
again,
that Indiana Jones thing.
Yes, yeah. In the Old Testament, when the priest had to cross the river carrying the Ark of the Covenant, the river raged until they put their feet in the water. Once they put their feet in the water, it calmed and it separated for them to pass on dry land. Moses is another great Old Testament example. Talk about the level of believing. So
for sure. And we, as we're, we're getting ready to head into what most society is looking at, a very tumultuous. How do you say that word?
Tumultuous
time as we're heading into elections and different stuff like that.
Oh, I thought you were talking about hurricane season.
No, I'm just more talking around the lines of like, I got folks around me, and that's all a lot of people are talking about. And all I continue to keep saying to them is, I'm not really concerned. God is my sufficiency.
Right.
Regardless of who is in charge, what leads who, blah, 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 what all
He's
that kind of stuff. My God is in charge. And that's the person, that's where I go to find the answers and the things I need. I would like to say another thing, a great example of not twirling or any of that kind of stuff. Look at your fish back there. Ask them if they're afraid,
right?
Fearful of anything. They just look happy.
Buddy? Yeah,
they just look happy.
Yeah,
no, I think our dog too.
Fifth host.
Such a great example. Our pets are a great example.
Wake up and they're just happy to live.
They just can't wait to go out and run around and chase a ball and lick you.
Yeah.
She's not wondering.
Well, we have cats, so they like to bite you.
Same Z's, but I'm sure they're not at your, going to you. Hey, do we know if we have enough food for tomorrow?
What's the plan for today? Yeah.
Okay.
No, they're pretty chill.
The couch going to catch on fire. Is the couch going to catch on fire? I don't know. None of that
stuff. Could happen.
So good.
No, it just causes for a peaceful life, and that's really the biggest takeaway of God in my life, is just the peace that I live with from day to day, not concerning myself with those major things. We have the love of God.
There's so many verses. We talked about all the ones that says fear not, but then there's the verse that says it is the peace that passes all understanding. How amazing is that? It's like you can't even imagine how much peace that is there, and just that's where I want to be. I want to be where I'm just cool as a cucumber no matter what comes, because my heavenly Father's got it.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like the next our next topic then, maybe, as we talk about the peace of God, right?
Ooh, that would be great.
Good segue.
I love how these just keep rolling into the next episode. So
we're never going to run out of topics to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it up, and we sure appreciate all of you listening to us. And we hope that you can find yourself a Bible, grab that thing, crack it open, find some, get yourself into the Word. Find some people that are believers, start talking to them, get yourself into, however you can do it. The answers are there. Definitely, they're there to find them.
Peace is available.
It is available, and fear not. God's got you. just, he wants a relationship with you. He wants to love on you. He wants to love his kids. And we sure appreciate the time spent together. I am John.
I'm Beth.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Brian.
Hey, you've been listening to the Word with Friends podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye. Bless you guys.
Bye.
Bye.